Yo, welcome, everybody. Welcome in to Swish for Real. This is your host, Big Mike, and my co-host, Wild Dog and Boogey Bob. Bob, man, how's your day, man? How things going on your end of the world?
Just trucking right along and laid some grass down underneath my tree where the dirt was. I didn't want the dirt to wash away, so I got out there, got that done yesterday before the doctor's appointment day, and rushed home and feeding my face so I could get on in time. So it's all good.
Thank you. Wild Dog, man, give us a little bit about your day, man. How's it going on your end of the world?
Hey, I'm still barkless, so I need y'all to bark for me again today.
Wild dog in the house.
I'm blessed, brother.
Yes,
Happy to
sir.
be here. Health is your wealth, so just people, just please add one good thing to your life, your diet, to your wellness every month, and then remove one bad thing, from your wellness, from your diet every month. And over time, you'll find a fountain of youth and much better quality of life and stability. So blessings.
Love it. Love it. And today we have a very special guest, the most legendary guys around here in Dallas for sure, Mr. Kiki VanDeWeghe. How you doing, Kiki?
Big Mike, Wild Dog, Boogey Bob, it is a pleasure to be here. I got to tell you, with all your many, many fans. But Mike, Big Mike, I didn't hear about your day. Talk to me. How was your day?
Oh, my day. Man, my day was a pretty busy day trying to get videos out, hanging out with the missus. Been off all week, kind of on vacation. Her birthday is coming up, so we've been really planning for that. We're having a little get together with her and her friends. So it's been busy, but other than that, it's been a great week, man. I'm having a great time hanging out.
Now hold on, Mike. Did you get her something nice? I just want to know. You have to tell us what it is, but is it something nice, please?
Well, she is not a materialistic girl, from pretty much. So I just gave her money. So whatever she wanted to do, I just gave her the money to do it.
I love it. All right. Well, you know what? Everyone says they're not a materialistic girl, but they kind of like a little gift, little thought, little love every now and then. So having the party's pretty good. Sounds good to me.
Thanks. And
All
we've
right.
been together for 21 years, so it's to get out of me.
Yeah, that's great. We got a little bit of a delay. Explain to the audience, but it is a pleasure to be here. I had a great day today. No issues at all. Got up, sun was shining again. We always had a saying whenever we lost a game, hey, sun's coming up in the morning. Another day to be great. So another chance. So today, I want everybody to think about tomorrow. Today was a great chance for you to be great. Tomorrow is a great chance for you to be great and make somebody else's day great. So I'm going to join the crew with a good saying. I loved what Wild Dog said. Boogey Bob had his, grass growing, feels good, when you lie down on the grass underneath the tree. Better than dirt, no question. But it's just good to be with you people, and let's get to it.
Thanks, man. Thanks, Kiki. So I'm gonna kind of change it up a little bit. I usually let the guys go first and ask them questions, and all the questions basically just kind of a run sheet where we go down. But we want to kind of get to know you a little bit. So each of us will have 3 questions for you, 3 questions apiece. So I'm going to start with my 3 questions. So my first question is, how was it when you became an NBA player? What was your rookie season like?
Well, I came as Boogie Bob was explaining. I got drafted by Dallas, but traded to the Nuggets in December, I think it was. So I was a little late to the season. But I was very lucky. I got traded to the Denver Nuggets, which really fit my style of game, which is, more moving without the ball, lots of offense and things like that, but just great teammates. And that's what makes a rookie, I think, have a successful season, experience, career, is having great veterans to guide that person along, whether it be in the WNBA or the NBA or the EuroLeague. And I was so lucky. I had Alex English and David Thompson and Dan Issel, all, Hall of Fame players, and, great experience. And they welcomed me right in, even though I shot a lot, took some of their shots away, I would imagine. But, it was a lot of fun. I had a great experience. I'm going to tell you a little story about my second game in the NBA. So I was playing and I was having a decent game. All right. You know what? I was okay. I hadn't played in a while, but I was going okay. And the coach calls a play for me at the end of the game. And we were down a point or something like that. And he says, all right, we're going to spread the floor. We didn't really have any plays, but you're going to spread the floor, give the ball to Kiki, and he's going to go one-on-one. Kiki, go win the game for us. So they're all, you got some Hall of Fame guys there. They're looking at me like I'm crazy. So, and the coach is even crazier. And those who know Doug Moe knows he's a great coach, but he didn't have any plays. He was full of fun and life, but really smart. He was a very smart guy. So anyway, we're walking out. The huddle breaks. All right, let's go win the game. So everybody's walking out. So every player comes over to me, right? Alex English whispers in my ear, if you get hung up, I'm going to be at the corner of the free throw line, okay? All right, Alex, I got you. Right on the elbow. Yeah, that's where I'll be. Dan says, Dan Issel says to me, you know what? If you get hung up, I am open in the corner. No problem. And David says to me, hey, Kiki, you just give it to me wherever I am, and I'm gonna get the basket. And I said, all right. And then T.R. Dunn, who was the other player, who was a great defensive player, just fantastic, comes up to me, whispers in my ear, Kiki, look, whatever you do, don't give me the ball. So it was great. It was just a great experience. I learned a lot from everybody. Just very, very fortunate. Had a lot of fun in the NBA. But putting on that uniform for the first time is something special. You dream about it and you dream about it. It's your goal. And then you get there and you realize there's a lot more to do here. These guys are really good. And, you got to come with your A game every single night.
Yeah, every single night. Yes, sir.
Was Fat Lever on that team as well?
Actually, no, Bob. And do I have to call you Boogey Bob every time, or is it Bob okay?
You can call me either.
Okay, so Boogey Bob, Fat Lever, and I got traded for each other, along with, it was a Portland-Denver trade, and as going into my 5th year in the league, and they traded Fat Lever, Calvin Nat, and who else? A draft pick, which turned into Blair Rasmussen, and a center by the name, I don't know. He's going to be mad at me when I don't remember his name right now. I'll tell you that. He's too big for me not to remember. It's kind of like Wild Dog. He's too big for me not to remember his name. Oh, man, definitely. I won't forget that. Anyway, so Fat was we got traded for each other. But Fat was a great player, just a fantastic player. As people who remember him in the 80s, he could do everything. He was kind of one of those Magic Johnson type players, and I hate to even compare to anybody to Magic Johnson, but he could go out and get you 25 points, 15 assists, 10 rebounds, triple double. As a matter of fact, tonight I think Westbrook set a record on triple doubles. Maybe that will never be broken. I thought Oscar Robertson's records would never be broken, but there always comes somebody, I guess.
Right.
All right. My next question is, what other talent do you possess? Are you like an artist? You do music, or what are some of the things we don't know that about you that's a hidden talent?
Well, let's see. I used to swim, um, and I will tell you this in all modesty, I was a much better swimmer than I ever was a basketball player. I was a very good age group swimmer from about 8 years old to 13. I quit at 13 and started to play basketball. So I can still swim pretty well. But at one point, I held most of the records as a swimmer, most of the age group records. But
Oh,
so that was
wow.
something that I really enjoyed swimming. I think it helped me a lot. I really think for kids, just a word of advice, and parents alike, have your kids do multiple sports. Don't specialize too early. Get lots of different things. Tim Duncan used to swim. Lots of people played soccer. Kim Olajuwon was a great soccer player. People like Clyde Drexler is a fantastic athlete, played all the sports. And, just get them out there. Sports can be such a learning experience. You can get out and learn teamwork and hard work and responsibility. All the keys to success in life, and being a good teammate is a big deal, because you're not gonna be successful every single night, and so you got to pick yourself back up. You got to get your team going sometimes when they're struggling. So it's just a good experience. But probably the biggest thing is I like to write. So I've written some screenplays. I've done some fun stuff like that. I write articles, which I enjoy. I post those once in a while, very rarely. But that's something I've always enjoyed. I used to write for several newspapers, and it was just fun to get your thoughts out there. And I'll tell you, for young parents, how I got started writing, because I always enjoyed reading, but I didn't write much. I had my son. This is going on 22 years ago in Denver, when I was the general manager there, and so I traveled all over the world scouting, and traveled with the team. So I was gone a lot, and I got to thinking, well, you know what? There's dangers out on the road. Lots of different things could happen. You don't know what if something happens to me. I don't get to send messages to my son or deliver messages as he's growing up. So I sat down and I used to write every day, sort of a different message, sort of a thought for him, something that I wanted to pass along. And, they ended up, I compiled them, and they end up making up articles, some of them which I've sent to him. But luckily I'm still around and get a chance to talk to him once in a while, which is great. He's in college at University of Chicago, doing great. But that's just
Congratulations.
something. Thank you. It's a great experience. You love when you can do something, but when your kids accomplish things, there is nothing better than family. Watching them grow up, be successful, on their own. And he's kind of like me. He's got a little bit of a stubborn streak. Doesn't want any help. Just wants to do it on his own. And he says, "Oh, I'll take care of it." He's got a good sense of responsibility and work ethic, which I'm very, very proud of. But I tell players all the time, and especially retired players, go back, give back to your community, give back whenever you can, share your knowledge, because what happens is, if you don't share that knowledge and something happens to you, what happens to that knowledge? All that hard work, all those things you've gained and worked for and thought about and learned, goes away. Nobody gets the benefit of it. So share your knowledge, give back to the community, whatever you can, and that'll come back to you tenfold. We've heard that all our lives, but that is really true.
That's amazing. I'm kind of interested in when you stated that you were into film a little bit, because I'm into film myself. So I guess we're two kindred spirits in that fashion. But my last question, and hopefully it's a good question. Is there any other famous athletes in your family?
I don't know how you define famous, but my grandfather was a professional soccer player, so
Okay,
he was in New York, so he was a good soccer player. And my father played professional basketball for the Knicks. He went to medical school at the same time, so he used to take the subway down, hop off, run into the garden, the old garden, which was 50th and 8th, and play the game right after his labs were over in medical school, and he couldn't arrive at the beginning of the game, so he arrived in the second quarter of the game, and then he would play the rest of the game. Didn't travel, so kind of an interesting subject. My mother was a swimmer. She was also Miss America. You couldn't tell by looking at me. I kind of have a face for radio, but
Wow.
but she was a very, very good athlete. Got us all into swimming. My sister was an Olympic swimmer and on the USA volleyball team, so she's the athlete in the family. My other sister played tennis at Stanford. She went to Stanford and was on the tennis team there. Very good tennis player, and played horse polo. She taught riding, so enjoyed that. My brother was a professional beach volleyball player, for many years, and he's got some great kids that are very, very athletic. We have my uncle. He was a professional basketball player. His name was Mel Hutchins, a 5-time All-Star. So we have a few people that played sports. Yes.
A few.
I know Wild Dog itching to say two words because we say it a lot. Go ahead, Wild Dog, tell him.
Pedigree matters. It's in your blood. It's in your family culture. It's not by accident.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like, and you sit around the dining room table when you're young, right? Mom's been cooking, and you're lucky enough, and we were, but it's what you talk about, like, right? Some people talk about politics, some people talk about history, some people talk about, whatever, world events. Other people talk about sports, how to be successful in sports and things like that. And we definitely, focused on sports. You got your homework done first, and that was the first question, and then it was all sports.
And then so it's like, I wasn't trying to lead with pedigree matters. I knew a little bit, but I'm glad Coach Mike asked that question. But then I'm also come from, military family. My stepfather was a tank commander, and then my mother died in office working as a logistics manager for the Army. And so we left Fort Knox, Kentucky. And so we spent 3 years outside of Nuremberg, Germany. So the fact that you were raised in Germany, I mean, I got a lot of memories. I got to see half of Europe, but first thing I think is like the cathedrals threw me off. I wasn't expecting, I wasn't expecting that when you're, touring different cities and you get to go and walk into the cathedrals, and then being a teenager, turning 16 and being an adult in Germany took me down a whole nother level of experiences. But I know you were born there. I'm just wondering what you remember, like from pictures or from stories. What was it like, almost being really a dual citizen?
Yeah, it's a good question. We left pretty early, and as you know, my dad got transferred, so we went to New York, then we went out to California, Northern California, and then Southern California. But he was, as I said, he went to medical school. He was a doctor and pediatrician, as a matter of fact. And so we traveled a bit, made some different stops. But I was pretty young. Maybe, and I don't remember much. I mean, I went back to Germany, and you're right about the cathedrals as well. You know, it's pretty amazing, the history and the beauty that is in and around Germany. Just the land itself is really, you know, something special. But you know, that's kind of my memories is when I went back and was scouting for, you know, the Nuggets originally. You know, but that's one of the good things about being in the NBA is you get to travel if you like to travel, and the Army too.
Right, right. Yes, sir. And then my next question is like, I mean, I can't help it, right? So another thing that we're big about here is, of course, like we invited you because of your legacy, and we respect you. But I really, when someone says, you know, Kiki VanDeWeghe, okay, yes, I hear the Drake song in my head. Kiki, are you? Yeah, yeah. And then the second thing I think of,
Well, I'd never heard that before.
right, right. But there's a Drake
Can you
song.
sing a little bit more of that, please? You know, for everybody.
It's a chorus, and and he's talking to Kiki. But that's the first thing that pops in my head because I'm just weird that way. But I think of you know, your time at UCLA, right? And the great John Wooden. You know, yeah, pedigree matters is one of our themes that we like to talk about. And also we love talking about legacies and involving legacies, we talk about coaching trees, right? And then I've got all this information about I love John Wooden and the coaching tree that he has, including the great Bobby Knight and Coach K and many others, especially from his time at Army. But you going to UCLA and being there with John Wooden, and I have you listed under his coaching tree. You know, if there's anything you would like to, you know, say about John Wooden or UCLA or just how that time there affected your love for basketball and your longevity and your basically being a basketball savant, how that impacted you.
You know, it's actually a good question. I didn't actually. Coach Wooden had retired 2 years before I got there, and the coach there when I got there was Gene Bartow, who was also a great coach, but following, you know, an all-time great like John Wooden is a tough job. So he was only there 2 years, and then Gary Cunningham, who was a longtime Wooden assistant, was my coach, and then Larry Brown was my coach when I was a senior. So I had a lot of different experiences, but really, you know, my dad got to know John Wooden very well. He took care of a lot of the athletes that were there, and he was on staff at UCLA at the time. And you know, the thing I remember about John Wooden, I went to some of his camps, and I remember this story about him tying shoes, and you know, he came and gave us a tying shoe lesson. Basically, he takes off his socks and shoes. We're all young campers, and he said, "I want to tell you, I do this every year for my team. I teach them how to tie their shoes because everything starts with the foundation of your feet and your shoes. And what you have to do, I realize it's a little thing, but doing a bunch of little things right is really the definition of success." So he's there, he's putting on his socks and making sure that there's no wrinkles in the socks, and then tying his shoes and starting at the bottom of the laces and making sure it's snug, not too tight. And, you know, he says, look, it's a little thing again, but it's going to add up to a big thing, you know. And another thing, and whether John Wooden said, yeah, you just pile it on and build together.
Yes,
and another thing, I think John Wooden said it, but I heard it from another great coach, Coach Pete Newell, who was at Cal and a big rival of John Wooden's at the time. And he was the general manager of the Lakers for a long time, legend in basketball, taught a footwork camp. You know, I was the second player there. I was with Coach Newell for 23 years as sort of at the end, the last 10 running the camp and, you know, kind of being part of it. But, Coach Wooden used to say this, and it's a good thing to remember for young athletes, is you only play basketball. There's 10 players on the court, so you only have the ball 10% of the time. But you're on your feet 100% of the time.
Yes, sir.
So make sure that you take care of your feet and, you have good footwork. And Coach Wooden used to start every practice with change of pace, change of direction, footwork stuff, reverse pivots, all these different things every single day. And so my experience at UCLA was understanding the importance of a great foundation. And obviously UCLA has an unbelievable, sports tradition there. It's a great school academically, and lots of great people have gone there, maybe starting with the great Rafer Johnson, who arguably was the best athlete maybe ever there. And that's including players like, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Lou Alcindor at the time, and Bill Walton and Sidney Wicks, Marcus Johnson, all these spectacular athletes. And I will tell you a funny story about Bill Walton. So Bill Walton my dad took care of Bill Walton, and so Bill Walton would come over after practice and training camp, and we would be having dinner. Now we lived about a mile from UCLA in Westwood, right on the outskirts of Westwood. And Bill would come over, he'd walk in the front door. Our door was never locked. So he would just walk in, and it was amazing who walked in that door, because, everyone knew it wasn't locked. So they just came in. So he comes in at dinner time. He used to, every day he used to do it. And my mother knew he was coming, so she had something prepared. And sometimes he brought one of his teammates with him, whether it be Greg Lee or Jamal Wilkes, Keith Wilkes at the time. But Bill would come, and he would sit down next to me. There would be a chair right there, and he'd grab my plate and start eating it. And he did it every time. He thought it was funny. But, so he used to tell that story. But that's
in your house.
That's Bill. In my house. Well, not my house, my parents' house. But, but then my mother would come out, and within 2 minutes, she would have Bill's plate, and she would say, "Here, Bill," and whoever else was there, she would bring out the plate and say, "Now, don't take all of Kiki's food. He's got to eat a little bit himself." I was maybe junior high school or something like that. But, so that's my memories of UCLA. Lots of great ones, really lots of great ones.
Oh my goodness. I'm glad I kept that on there. So, around if you don't mind. I'm keeping you on the John Wooden's coaching tree, but I'm just going to shift you on to Larry Brown. Is that okay?
Hey, you can, what? I'll tell you one last thing about John Wooden. So I get my first general manager's job in Denver, and I call up two people. One was the great Jerry West, who was arguably, maybe Red Auerbach is in that category, but one of the best general managers ever.
Yes.
I mean, truly ever. I mean, he's obviously a Hall of Fame basketball player and one of the best at his position ever, and all that type of stuff. He's a fantastic GM, just unbelievable. And so I went to see him. I asked for, can I talk to you for 10, 15 minutes? I just got this job. And he said, okay. By the way, Jerry West, a little tidbit, taught me how to shoot baskets in his driveway when I was 13. Yeah, he says, "Come here, you're not shooting. Let me give you a little lesson." Because my dad was actually at the time one of the Laker team doctors. So it's like he knew Jerry. He was overseeing his kids, and Jerry brought me out to his driveway right in Brentwood, and right next to Sunset Boulevard. And all right, he's showing me how to shoot, and he spent 10 minutes with me. Imagine if the guy would have spent 11. It's like, come on. So anyway, I saw Jerry West, and my second call, not even second call, I shouldn't say it that way. My other call was to Coach John Wooden, and
wow.
I asked him the same question: "Can I come over for a few minutes, Coach, and just pick your brain? I just got made the general manager." And he says, "Yeah, I know. Come on over." And so he lived in Encino and same place for 30-something years. And so I go over there, and I was there literally 6 hours with him. And he loved poetry. For people who don't know, loved He was an English teacher, prior, and loved prose, loved poetry. And he read me poetry and gave me poems, and some of them are just amazing, and I'd never heard before. Some of them are famous, and some of them I even remembered it, today.
Right.
So
So it's almost like he was just throwing you into showing you his therapy, showing you about balance,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was more he started with the fundamentals.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like he said, here's what I base, these are my principles, which are, based on, your, however you want to say it, your morals, your values, your principles of life. And those are exhibited through your habits. And, your habits are reflective of that, and you become what you do on a regular basis. And then the third component to that is your goal, whatever your goals are, and your particular goal you're looking at. But he taught me so much, and I still remember Invictus, out of the night that covers me, black as a pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. Like, actually, that's not bad. I remember that's the first stand.
Yeah, you own it.
I might even be able to go on. I don't know. I heard Morgan Freeman do it once, so I'm embarrassed to even repeat that.
And Kiki, you hit on my third question already. So, but I just want to then give you your flowers and thank you for being a very, very wonderful example of life after basketball. We have a belief: you love the game, it'll love you back, right? Football players are like, yeah, you love a game, but it never love you. It might give you some gifts here and there, but basketball is truly a gift that if you love it, it will love you back until you're gone. So again, I just want to reiterate how the importance of, basketball is a game you can play all your life, but when you're no longer a star on the court or your time, your 15 minutes is over, there's an entire life, after playing basketball and the impact you can have. And like you said, even Jerry West, it should really be a 2-time Hall of Famer as a player and as an executive, So wonderful, sir. Wonderful.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. You guys, obviously, you live principled, and
Awesome.
I can tell by the way you're talking. Your values are in the right place, and it's a pleasure to be on and talking to people like that. I think as I said, we started this conversation earlier by talking about, hey, you got to give back, and you got to, that's maybe the greatest gift you can give to your kids, is understanding sort of the basic fundamentals of a successful life. And, to me, it's always about being grateful. I'm so grateful for all the things I get to do and have done. And it's so lucky and so fortunate in so many ways to stay healthy, through most of my career, and to meet the people that I've met, just unbelievable. I mean, it's I sort of pinch myself to say, wow,
Right.
this. And, so it's a great way to start, and Morgan Freeman, a guy who I really admire, he was an athlete too. And he says, look, speaking on gratitude, he says, put your shoes underneath your bed before you go to sleep, way underneath your bed. And the interviewer says, why? And he says, because you should start every day on your knees saying thank you. That'll get you there. And so I really believe in that. Just remember, when you're having a tough day, just think about a couple things you're grateful for, and you'll be like, okay, life is not as bad as I think. There are some good things to this life, and that's one of the things that to me, if we could all just realize we're more alike than we are different. We got some differences, and that's for sure, and that's what makes us all individuals, and that should be respected. But we're more alike than we are different, and that goes for guys, it goes for girls, it goes for anybody out there. we're all part of one big family, and let's treat each other a bit better. And I think life will be better for everybody.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I
Thank
couldn't
you.
agree with that more so. Yeah, and yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Boogie Bob, I know you had your round of questions ready to go, so kind of throw them off, man, and give Kiki your thoughts.
Well, first of all, I want to say it's an honor and a privilege to talk to basketball royalty. And Mike and I met. We coached seventh, eighth, and ninth graders. And one of the three principal. First of all, I had three principles. One was uh, have fun. Second was life lessons come through sports. And and the third was give me your 100%. You might not be as good as the other guy, but as a coach, if you give me your 100%, then I'm that's all I could ask for. But we fully believed in pouring into the kids and teaching them how to become men, and more importantly, how to get through life. So Mike and I and even Wild Dog believe in that. So I'm glad to hear you say that. I'm going to say I got a couple hard questions, and it was tough to narrow it down to three. So I actually replaced one of mine because I have one. It'll be the second question. But who was your favorite player growing up?
Wow. It changed over time.
Yeah.
And when I got into basketball, obviously the Lakers were really good. They had Elgin Baylor and Jerry West. Wilt was on the team. Actually, Wilt just retired, but I mean, who could not like that crew? I mean, but I was a Knicks fan, and because my whole family came from New York.
Yeah.
So all right, I got Willis Reed, I got Dave DeBusschere, I got Walt Frazier, so smooth, it's incredible, and Bill Bradley, and people often forget Earl Pearl Monroe, who was just he was a legend. I mean, he was like the guy who was a legend on the playground. He was a legend in, I think it was Baltimore. It was playing that. Washington was in Baltimore, but anyway, he traded to the Knicks, and just unbelievable player. Just like true man. I could go on and on. So I had a lot of guys that I watched, and they were all over the place. I have so many favorite guys, from Rick Barry to Connie Hawkins, but I got to meet a lot of those players. That's really what I'm grateful for, Boogie Bob, is a lot of those players I got to sit with them, talk to them. I mean, it's kind of, I'm sitting there, one of my first games in the NBA, we're playing the Philadelphia 76ers. And so I'm standing next to Dr. J, Julius Erving, who's like a hero of mine. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I'm standing next to him. And he looks over and he goes, "Good luck, kid." And I said, "Oh, man." He talked to me. He said something.
Yeah.
But like everybody wanted to be Dr. J, right? I mean, guy was so cool. I mean, he like everything was, like the Sade song. He was smooth operator. I mean, he was just smooth. Everything he did was great. But one of my, I have favorites all the time. I mean, I can't even name them. I love Iceman. I love George Gervin, right? I mean, how can you not love George Gervin? Oh, finger roll. So, all right, you guys. Now, here you go. So, reminds me of a story. So, I'm sitting down and we're at some playoff game sometime, and I got to be pretty good friends with Gervin, and he's really a great guy, by the way. One of the best. He's just a great individual. And anyway, so I'm sitting down and I said, Ice, I always wanted to ask you this one question. Like, who was the toughest player you ever played against? And he sits there and he gives me that look, like after he just made, a finger roll, like, I mean, I can't believe it myself. And he said, I can't believe you even asked me that question. But anyway, he looks at me and he goes, He goes, Kiki, I only played against 2 types of players, easy 30 and hard 30. I said, and I looked at him, yeah, either way, I was getting 30. I said, okay, that's why I love you. But, I don't know. It's too hard of a question. When you want to be a basketball player, you dream about the pros and you idolize all the guys. You try to copy all their moves, and it's just amazing that you actually get to meet them and talk to them.
Yes.
Well, tagging right along with the players, this next question, I'm sure you've got some stories, and looking backward, there's a lot of other players, but I want to hear from you about Bird's trash talking on the court, and did he ever trash talk you?
Honestly, really not too much. No, he did. He really didn't. One of the first times we played against each other, I played in the Boston Garden. I remember it was my first 30-point game. I was a rookie, and it was funny because I'm not going to say who said it, but the general manager at the time came up to me. You're on your way, kid. You scored more points than Bird. And one of the Denver coaches turned around. He says, "He's never going to be Bird." I said,
setting you up, dog. He was setting you up.
That is just fine if I can just compete with him.
Yeah.
Okay. But he really never really trash talked me. I'll tell you, he's I will tell you one story. So we're sitting there and we're going out to this place, Jake's, and Bird had a couple beers and like all the guys, he had some beer with fish or whatever we were eating. I can't really remember. And I'm trying to get him to drink more, right? You know what? Can I buy you another beer? Because I know I'm going against him the next night. And he finally says, "Oh no, I'm okay." And then I see him before the game, and he's kind of just walking around and kind of just. I'm going, oh, maybe he drank too much last night. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe the 3-4 beers, maybe that's too much. And so he's like walking around kind of just hazy-eyed a little bit. And I'm not saying anything. Like I'm like going, this is great. We're in Portland, and I'm guarding him, obviously. First play of the game, I remember, he caught the ball. He didn't even look at the basket. I swear he didn't look. And he put the ball behind his head and just caught it and just launched it up in the air and then turned around the other way. And it didn't touch anything. Nothing. I mean, Bob, it went straight through the net. You know how you get a basket where it goes right through the net, doesn't even move the net. And I'm going, uh-oh. It's gonna be a long night.
He was in the zone, dog.
he was in the zone from 1 second. He didn't like that early 30 I got, and he says he's gonna address that easily. Anyway, he was a great player. I can't say enough good things about him. He was just a basketball savant. And people talk about players and he's like today, a bigger version of Luka Doncic. I mean, he could do just so much. He didn't look fast. He didn't look necessarily strong. He was fast and strong and quick, and just had a nose for basketball. Just kind of one of those guys that, he was going to find a way to beat you. Of course, that, my first night we played against the Celtics in Boston Garden, he probably had 27 or something like that. But Robert Parrish, I still remember this is the thing about sports. You still remember kind of the mistakes. And there was a switch, and Robert Parrish hit a turnaround jumper from the top of the key to beat us. And oh man, I was depressed. I thought we were going to beat him in Boston Garden. I'd seen all the wars in Boston Garden, and it was like a dream to step on that parquet floor and dribble and not have the ball come up because there's all dead spots everywhere in the old Boston Garden. But I thought we were going to win, but they got us.
Well, the the last question, and I'm trying to phrase this in the nicest way possible, but I'm kind of curious from your side. Both Wild Dog and I were 76ers fans, but one of the first players the Mavs had played at my high school was on the initial team. So I kind of followed them from the beginning, and I knew they had drafted you. And, we ended up with Rolando Blackman, so it all turned out good. And Ro's a heck of a guy. I've talked with him a couple times. But from your perspective, what was it like being booed by the Dallas fans when you were with the Nuggets and you came to Dallas and all the boo birds were out when you touched the ball?
You know what? And it's a great question. It really is. It's not a tough question at all because so the first time I went to Dallas as a rookie, they had armed guards walk me over because we stayed at it was Reunion Arena, which is they had I think it was a Hyatt hotel close by, like just walking to right across from it.
Yeah.
So armed guards walked me over, and nobody bothered me, but they had the armed guards, So I think they're making it a little bit bigger deal than it was. But all right, so I get in there and they start with introductions, right? And so the starting lineup lines up on the court, and all four players that I had named before, like they take 2 steps away from me and leave me there like by myself, and because when they went crazy booing me, and all of the guys were sitting over there laughing. They thought it was funny, but I was mad at them for that. But anyway, and they booed me every time I touched the ball and things like that, and it was wild. And it ended up, after maybe a couple years, like people would come up to me and says, we really kind of like you as a player. We just love to boo you. It's great. It's great fun. I said, you know what? I have a good time here too. This is like one of my favorite stops in the NBA. I love coming here, and ended up being honestly one of my favorite cities. It was just fantastic, and people still remember that, and they talk about it, and they think it might have been a bad time, but it turned out great. It turned out fantastic, and ended up coaching in Dallas, for a couple years, working for Don Nelson, and obviously Mark Cuban bought the team, and had a great relationship with him. Really admire what he's been able to do. And I was hired. It's kind of an interesting story. So I was hired because, remember I mentioned, I taught footwork at the Pete Newell camp, big guys. And I was hired for Dirk Nowitzki, really, at the end of the day, because they were unsure, because he had a tough rookie year. So they hired me. I came in and, ended up with Steve Nash and Michael Finley and a number of really good players. Obviously, it would have been successful whether I was there or not, obviously. But, it was just fun coming back, and I loved living in Dallas. It was just such a fun city, and people remembered that, and they'd smile and say hello and say, so glad you're with us now. And, but it was a great 2 years, and obviously so happy for the Mavericks' success. All the success they've had is pretty amazing. Actually, if you look at the last, 15 years or so, it's been great.
Yeah, they've been an amazing team for sure for the last couple of years. If you could remember, what did you average against the Mavs during your playing time?
Oh, no idea. Boogey Bob's the stat guy.
Well, his career stats were 19.7 points a game, and he was 22nd in MVP voting his second or third year, and you made the All-Star team twice. 15 year when the average career was only like 3-4 years, 5 years. You played like 15 years.
I was out there for a little while. Yes. I would still be playing if they'd let me. It's like it was a lot of fun. Being out there is a real honor, and I think there's maybe around last I heard a little over 4,000 players that played in the NBA so far, maybe a little bit more than that. But so it's a high honor, and I am honored.
You even got to play for your hometown New York Knicks.
I did, and I played 1 year as a player coach for the Clippers. That was my last year, and I was
Oh,
a player
nice.
coach, so I didn't. And Larry Brown was the coach. It was my senior year at UCLA. He was the head coach, and he got me. And he said, "Look, Kiki, you're not going to play that much, but I want you to come help the young players, and when I need you, you can play and things like that." So I really didn't play much, but I used to play horse with the young players, and I used to we talk about footwork and different things like that. Had some very, very good players on the team. But the last game, it was sort of a Larry Brown tradition, right? And I hadn't played in, many games. I'd been sitting on the bench, but I stayed in decent shape. And Larry comes to me before the game and says, "Hey, Kiki, this is arguably your last NBA game. I'm going to start you." And I said, "All right, no problem." And so, I'm out there, and it's kind of different because I hadn't played in a while. So I'm sort of just passing, trying to get the young players, like I did in practice, trying to get the young players going, and telling them what to do, and trying to help and things like that. And I figured I'd be out there a couple minutes, right? And then they take me out and play the real players. And Larry just left me in. Said like towards the end of the 6 minutes, 7 minutes, I'm still in there. And I'm going, well, you know what? I'm gonna shoot a little bit. This isn't gonna be my last game. I'm gonna have some fun. And so I started shooting. I had a decent night. I don't know what I had. I think it was 29 or something like that by the end of the game.
What?
And Larry
Nice.
comes up to
Crazy
me.
work.
Coach Brown comes up to me. He goes, and I can't say it just the way he did it because he used a few four-letter words, but he says, "You didn't tell me you could still play." It's like, don't worry, tomorrow I won't be able to walk, but that night I was okay.
Nice. All right, so our next topic, we're going to talk about what era of basketball was the hardest to play in. So we got the 80s, we got the 90s, and we got the 2000s. So we're going to ask you these questions. Well, we'll address this question to you, Kiki. What do you think was the hardest era out of those three eras, the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s?
Well, it's every era has their different things about it. So some are tougher, some are better. I think the 80s and 90s was a much more physical game, and you go back to even the 70s and places like that. It was more physical. There was a lot more bumping and pushing and things that went on, but today the game is faster. The athletes, I think, are better, certainly better trained. My pregame meal was probably a piece of pizza and a sandwich or something. But in today they have training tables and really really take care of the players. The NBA has done just a fantastic job of the cutting edge research on making players better, helping them, and what's surprising, and I just want to mention this. I taught footwork at the first WNBA camp, and first of all, the women they paid attention. They were so great and unbelievable. I had so much fun coaching. But if you watch a WNBA game today, the talent out there is unbelievable. It's unbelievably good. The skills are amazing, and it's just all of them out there. It's truly amazing. If you go back at the beginning to today, it's staggering how good these girls are. And I grew up with Ann Myers, and Ann Myers used to come and always play with us, and she was a great athlete. Cheryl Miller was a great athlete, went to USC, and Nancy Lieberman, and you had some great players. But now everybody's good. I mean, everybody on that team. It's such a high level of basketball now. It is so much fun to watch. So I don't know if I can answer that question. I know I didn't answer it directly, but let me just say each era has special things about it. And so it's difficult to say which is harder to play in. And I would say, now the players are, obviously they are so well trained and so well conditioned and arguably more athletic. But then you go back to the 60s, and who's more athletic than Wilt Chamberlain? I don't know. Or Bill Russell, you know, and, Oscar Robertson. What I can tell you, though, is all the stars that played back in the day, whatever era almost that you want to name, would be stars today. And it isn't because they were more physical or less physical. It's because they had a tough mental attitude, and they had this never give up attitude. And a star in any era would be a star today. I really believe that.
Gotcha. Bob, I want to pose that same question to you, man. What are your thoughts on those three eras of basketball? Which one do you think was the toughest to play in?
Well, having watched all of those decades, I kind of quantify it. To me, the 80s were the toughest, uh, but there were fewer teams and there was a higher concentration of talent. The league was just starting to expand. In fact, Dallas's first season was 1980. And then Miami and Charlotte came along. But before that, in the 80s, you had a lot of concentration of talent. So to me, I think that was tougher because nowadays it's like two all-stars or two superstars, three. The Lakers were always loaded. Boston was loaded. Philly was loaded. Uh, if you won a championship in the 80s, you had to go through a gauntlet of teams to get there. I mean, Dr. J and Bobby Jones, Reese Cheeks, Andrew Tona, they didn't win one until they got Moses Malone. They had Daryl Dawkins, Chocolate Thunder, and they just couldn't break through, but they got one. In the 90s, I always had this term: no blood, no foul. Uh, and that's kind of the playground mentality. It was physical, very physical. That's why they call Detroit the Bad Boys. And we used to call it bruiser ball. You played football, basketball. You didn't play pure basketball like the WNBA. You played football, basketball. And I see Kiki smiling there. I guess he knows. And in the 90s, there was no zone. And there was no hand checking was allowed. And in fact, in Dallas, we like to call it the Derek Harper rule because Derek Harper was so strong, he would just steer you where he wanted to go. And so the hand check rule was actually enforced because, in the 90s, you could hand check. There was a lot of talented big men in the 90s, as Kiki can probably attest to. You had Tom Chambers, that was about your height, 6'10", that could shoot the ball. Dan Marley, a lot of guys that weren't centers that were talented big men. And he ran a lot of isolation plays in the 90s. I'll never forget watching Mark Aguirre back his big butt down into the paint as a small forward and then turn around and shoot in your face. And Barkley came along kind of the same way. In the 2000s, it's more about speed, floor spacing, and athleticism, emphasizing more zone, 5 out, and you see a lot more defense switching. And then, as Dogg likes to say, it's positionless basketball now. Every one of the 5 players has to be able to dribble, create their own shot, and rebound. So that's kind of my breakdown of the three, but my vote would be the 80s just because of the concentration of talent and how tough it was. The Celtics only won like 2 or 3 championships, 81 and 86, everybody remembers, because they beat the Rockets. But other than the Lakers, they're just teams didn't win a whole lot of championships.
Well, I guess I'll jump in since I played in those eras. And small forwards, each era, and as Bob sort of points out, each era had like a specialty where one position was super strong. Like in the 80s, it was small forwards. In the 90s, as you pointed out, lots of great centers, but it used to be and the game has changed. And today it's guards. You have so many from Mitchell to obviously LeBron is a guard, but kind of just so many guards out there that are just so special, and they dominate.
Kyrie.
Exactly. I mean, you could go on and on, but in the '80s, small forwards led by guys like Bird and Dr. J, Dominique Wilkins. It just goes on and on and on. Tom, you mentioned Tom Chambers, but each team, had a great guy. The guy that people forget all the time, who was arguably as good as anybody and probably the toughest cover, was Bernard King. And Bernard was just amazing. It's one of the reasons I ended up being a good basketball player is I spent a summer with Bernard, and we went one-on-one every day. And
Nice.
he was unbelievable. And so every time you played, you ran into a very tough player. Whether it be Truck Robinson or whoever it might be. Adrian Dantley, unbelievable player. Only about 6'5", maybe 6'4", but you couldn't stop him. And it was like he took you inside, and that was it. But so every era, as Bob rightly points out, has its great players, and whether it's tougher in one era or another, obviously skills are hugely important. And so if you get your fundamentals, you can play in any era. Good footwork. As a matter of fact, they talk about 3-point shots today, and 3-point shot is the most efficient shot in basketball. Corner three is period the most efficient shot, and that's why players take so many threes today. But all the good players, all the big scorers, and you think about this, and you watch them from in any era. You go to Michael Jordan, you go to Kobe Bryant, you go to Steph Curry, LeBron, whoever it is, have great fundamentals and great mid-range games. And the players now, the great scorers, still are that way. Watch any star on any team, and they make threes, there's no doubt, but they have a great mid-range game, great fundamental grasp of the game. And so, you got some awfully special players out there that it's really fun. I mean, honestly, I have never seen the talent just across the board. You can turn on any game, doesn't matter. And huge talent out there, great coaching. It's just a great live performance every single night. I see things that I didn't even think were possible. It's pretty amazing. But so anyway, I'm agreeing with you, but it's tough to pick the best era. I don't know. I will. Oh, all right. I'm gonna tell you a good story. So everything always reminds me of a story. So anyway, my dad.
So what did you consider the Shrimp? Was he a small forward to you, or was he a power forward?
He was both. Detlef was again. I probably should have mentioned him. He's a little younger than I am, but he played against him certainly, and great defender. He could play both. He was a little bigger. He was like 6'10" or so. Very talented. And what do I consider Dirk? Dirk's 7 foot, or Durant. It's like these guys are 7 foot tall, playing like small forwards or guards. And they can shoot from the outside and all this stuff. But you got it's hard to categorize supers. Those guys you just name super players in their era, and it's difficult to compare era to era. But they're going to be supers no matter what. But I was going to tell you, because you mentioned something, Bob mentioned something that reminded me of a story my dad told me. So when he played in the early 50s, they had, I think, 8 teams. I don't know. Somebody, Bob, you got to correct me. It might have been 8, might have been 12. Most on the East Coast. And so they played the Celtics like 12 times in the preseason. And so, if you're going to play a team 12 times, And I think they played him in the playoffs the year before. But if you're going to play a team 12 times, you know, you get bumped and bruised and you start getting some grudges out there. I mean, you know, you don't end up liking those people, you know, no matter what happens. So he says, look, you know, they were playing a game and it was a preseason game. It was like the 12th game right before the season was going to start. And so they're in the circle. They throw up the ball for to start the game. And instead of anybody looking at the ball, everybody turns and hits the guy that they were next to. Just an all-out brawl. he said it was the funniest thing he's ever seen. It's like, you know, they just all hated each other by the end of 12 games so bad. They didn't want to play. They just wanted to fight.
Oh, wow.
Today you couldn't do that, but, you know, and that time was a little different.
Right.
Now, you mentioned mid-range shooters, and one person came to mind who's a very good mid-range shooter, and I'm going to shoot it over to you, Wild Dog, in a second. DeMar DeRozan, man, that guy is a mid-range assassin, man, when you think about mid-range shooters. So, Wild Dog, on your thoughts about, you know, over this conversation with the eras, 80s and 90s and the 2000s, what do you have as far as era goes when it comes to the hardest to play in?
I mean, Big Mike, Kiki, and Boogey Bob, I was just like, I tried to, you know, I watch basketball through all this time. I try to give an eye test. And like everyone was saying, I saw great players in every era. You know, if you're great, you're great. And then you had all these dynasties in each era, you know, in each decade. And I'm like, well, and then I was like, well, I actually played, you know what I'm saying? I still, you know, in my age played basketball. And, you know, I consider myself a two-way player, but defense first, fundamentals first, and defense first. But I noticed my transition as the rules changed. It got hard. it got, I mean, I was so busy trying to remember what I could and couldn't do, trying to break what some might consider bad habits now. That was difficult. Being in the gym in the 2000s, you know what I'm saying? And I was almost like frozen. Like, okay, like, I'm just going to give you space, and if you make a mistake, I'm going to make you pay for it. That's kind of how I ended up playing defense on the court. Dang. So by the time the 2000s came around, all the rules, man, I was like handcuffed, shackled, and then in a straitjacket. That's what it felt like, you know, trying to play, you know. So that kind of led me more towards the 2000 eras because of the rules. You know, the rule changes, right? And then when I started looking closer at the 2000s, then I got away from the players because that was like a sum zero game. I stopped looking at designers. That was like a sum zero. Then I was like, well, the coaches would probably be a sum zero too. But then I noticed, wait a minute, there's two schools of thought we have. You have, like, you know, the traditional coaches, if you can't play, you coach, so to speak. And then you have the players who played who eventually become coaches. So we got the Phil Jackson, you know, side of the coaching tree, and then you have the Greg Popovich side of the coaching tree. And in the 2000s, right, they're the epitome on both sides, right? And they were at their peak during the 2000s, okay? Then you still got to throw in Pat Riley, Larry Brown, you know, and others, Hall of Fame coaches, you know, hitting their peak stride in the 2000s. So for me, I give the edge to the 2000s because of the rule changes, but more importantly, because of the Hall of Fame coaches hitting their peaks in the 2000s. That's the difference maker for me.
Wow. That is interesting. I like the way you put that analogy as far as the two coaches in that specific era in the 2000s. Yeah, I kind of I'm more of a 90s guy. I think the 90s had the worst. I guess the rules then were like it's like a boxing match in the 90s, and it kind of the Jordan rules would kind of change a lot of that though, because with Detroit being who they were at the time, man, it was just tough playing in that era. And that's when I started really watching basketball in the 90s, and I really enjoyed it. But when it changed, like in 2000, and the rules changed where you can't hand check and do all the extra stuff that you did in the 90s, I thought the 2000 was softened up in my opinion, because I'm used to playing blacktop basketball where you foul, like Boogie Bob said, no blood, no foul. So I'm used to that kind of stuff, but I get it though. I get it though. We're gonna go to our next subject, and we're gonna kick back over to you, Kiki. We're gonna talk about our one of the main guys that had a lot to do with the Lakers and Miami being so successful. We're gonna talk about Pat Riley. And what are your thoughts on his career and his impact on the NBA and basketball in general?
Well, I'm gonna answer that question, but I'm gonna say I want to have one more thing on, because we've talked a lot about the transition from the '90s
Mm-hmm.
and sort of the no harm no foul type mentality to a more elegant game. I'll just say it that way.
Yeah.
Less contact, more offense. Everything's a trade-off, right? I mean, either the defense gets a little bit of an advantage, or the offense gets a little bit of an advantage. A little more offense advantage means less of a defensive advantage, right? So there's three things that really changed the game to what it is today. And one was started when David Stern asked Jerry Colangelo, who was then general manager and I think one of the governors of the Phoenix Suns. But anyway, he was the
Yeah.
general manager. And, they formed a committee and they changed the rules of the game. They adjusted the rules of the game. They adjusted it so less hand checking. If you in the '90s, if you ran across the middle, across the key, you got hit, and you got hit hard. So if you were going to drive to the basket, I mean, I remember one time I drove to the basket on, Artis Gilmore, and I dunked over him. Well, very lucky. Artis Gilmore, if anybody doesn't know, was one of the strongest players ever to play this game. He was, he was as strong as Shaq, I think. Maybe not quite as mobile as Shaq, but he was really just extraordinarily strong individual. And so, I was feeling pretty good about myself. Dunked over Artis. I watched Artis play. He's kind of a hero of mine. And the guy guarding me was my college roommate, David Greenwood. And so, so I drive the next time and I go by Greenwood, and Greenwood's bigger than I am. And I go in and I'm thinking, well, I dunked on him once, so I'm going to dunk on him again. And I ended up, I sort of blacked out because I woke up in the third row. I mean, I just like, whoa, what happened? I just remember I was up in the air going to dunk, I thought.
Dang.
But that's the '90s. The '90s were, that way. And so they had lots of rule changes, right? More running, allowed more running, more freedom of movement was a big deal. The game was prettier to watch, less, as Bob pointed out, less one-on-one isolation basketball, more movement. Pick and rolls became more important. The pivot man in the middle became less important. It used to be a center in the middle who was the pivot man. He was called the pivot man because the offense pivoted around him. And so anyway, that's the first thing. The second thing is really the rise of international players. That was a big deal in the '80s. Very few. Detlef Schrempf was one of the first really good international players who came in, and I was obviously born internationally, but sort of a dual citizen. I was born on Air Force Base, so kind of a pseudo international player, but very few international players. Now it's over 25% of the league is international players, and they really up the level of the game. And if you think about it, it only makes sense. I mean, U.S. is only 5% of the population of the world. You look around the world, and you got such a big pool of talent. And there, I think the last 3 MVPs have been international players. So lots of great international players really changed the game. Where centers don't post up as much. They shoot 3-point shots, and you look at guys like Wemby and people like that. I mean, they arguably would be centers, but they play almost like a guard, and so that's secondarily a big change. And the third item is analytics. Analytics has really changed the way the game is played, and the best example is the one we've been talking about. It's 3-point shots. 3-point shots are today the most efficient shot in basketball. Corner 3-point is by far the most efficient. But, it used to be, well, you'd play inside out basketball. Well, and it's changed the game. It's changed the way the game's played. Instead of running lots of times for a dunk on a fast break, they'll run to the corners and stop at the 3-point line instead. And they'll take the open three versus coming in for a layup, because it's just such a much better shot, and they practice it so much. They're so much better long distance shooters. You look at Lillard and Curry, obviously, and a number of guys who shoot now 10 feet beyond the line effectively. So, you've got circumstances that change the era of the game and how it's played, why things are done that way. And if I could add one more other thing, I think the coaching is as good as it's ever been, and maybe better now. The coaches spend so much time reviewing the game, and whether they played or didn't play, however they came up, and basically all of them played at least in school, know the game very well. But, they are so smart in the strategies. They really study the old strategies, put their own twist on them. And the defenses, I think, are better. And the offensive plays, they're very efficient. And so, you've got a fun game to watch now, as I said. But I just wanted to add that. Now, quickly on Pat Riley. Pat Riley, I used to rebound for him when he played for the Lakers. So I was a little kid running around, chasing balls. And he wasn't actually the best shooter in the world, so I was running all over the place. But, I know he was a good shooter. I'm kidding. But, he was a guy that in many ways, when I played for him when he was coaching the Knicks, obviously he got his start with the Lakers as a coach. I think Jerry West was coaching, and Jerry West sort of turned it over to Pat Riley. And Pat just exploded from there. His work ethic, how he played, it was sort of, this sort of tough, hard-nosed basketball, lots of practice time. He's famous for that. And I can tell you it's true. I mean, we spent lots of time on the practice court, lots of time reviewing films, lots of times taking care of our bodies and working out and different things like that. So he's really, gone from a run and gun, showtime atmosphere to now at the Miami Heat, the culture of hard work and teamwork and putting it all together. He's really just a brilliant basketball mind. And, I didn't really understand sort of how hard it was for him to be that demanding all the time. And I didn't understand it as a player because I was sort of towards the end of my career when I played for him. And I only had so much in my body at that point, so much I could give. And it felt like a little bit like Allen Iverson. All right, you want me for practice or you want me for a game? Which one would you like? And, which is a famous old line, but it's and I don't, Iverson, who I know well, just loved to play basketball, and so he was ready to go play anytime. But I didn't understand it. I was always beat up, so it was hard for me to stay healthy. So I went to Pat and I said, Pat, I think you're making everybody tired. And he looked at me and said, well, he said some choice words to me and then asked me to please get out of the office and go practice my shooting, something productive. But, I came back and I realized as I, became a coach and a general manager and tried to emulate some of the things he did, how hard it was for him. And I went to him and I apologized. I said, you know what? I didn't understand how hard it was, what you've done and how you've done it. And I want to apologize for questioning, what you were doing. I said, because he really knew. And, his record shows it. But Pat's, I view him as a great friend and a little bit of a mentor. And he's been a mentor to a lot of good coaches and general managers and sort of the next generation. He passed along a lot of his knowledge, and I'm very, very grateful for that.
Yeah, he broke my heart in 2006, so I don't have a lot of good
It
words.
broke mine too.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the Mavs where he did our poor Mavericks. So, well, Dog, your thoughts on Pat Riley, man, the impact he had on the league and basketball in general.
Yeah, I mean, picking up on your comment about 2006, and then, part of the reason why I picked the 2000s was because, Pat Riley, those around him and him himself, he kind of felt like in 2006, he kind of put all of his, experiences and everything together, you know what I'm saying? Almost kind of stepping down, to take over the head coaching, responsibilities of the Heat, and really doing some of the best work he's ever done as a head coach, So I feel like he contributed to my, my thing, my tipping over with choosing the 2000s as being the more difficult decade among the three, So, and we like, as fans, we get like to celebrate, legacies, and we talk about, Phil Jackson's chips and Bill Russell's chips. But let's not forget Pat Riley. If I count correctly, it's at least 9. 1 as a player, 6 as a coach, and then 2 as an executive. So somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but that's 9 chips at all different levels: player, assistant coach, head coach, and then as an executive. So, I mean, mad respect for his legacy, for his coaching tree, and the impact that he's still, generating, whether it be the Lakers, the Knicks, the Miami Heat, and like Kiki was hinting towards, Pat Riley is notorious for his blue collar work ethic and player development. You either get with the program or the program will break you. So, and players are really, in one hand, speaking about, freely now about how they suffered, but then like Kiki said, you can't deny the results. So players have to reconcile within themselves, between how they felt, Riley's method took years off my career, but Matt Riley's method also, gave me the best success or the, my best times, performances in the sport. So even players reconcile themselves, with Pat Riley's culture and way of going about things, and so so decades and still ongoing with Pat Riley's legacy, and I just dreaded seeing that slick back hair, He broke my heart in 2006, but him being around and just added to, you were never safe, I know in the, the time with the Knicks is like, well, this or that, but, well, how many East Conference finals do you need to go to? How many NBA finals do you have to go to? And then, they were losers. Who did they lose to? Oh, Michael Jordan, the Bulls. Okay, be quiet. Go sit down somewhere. So this is a man who's, even those who know him best have to reconcile themselves. He cannot be tarnished, So mad flowers and mad respect to Pat Riley.
No doubt. I just want to add. So my first training camp with Pat Riley was down in Charleston, South Carolina, and he was the coach of the Knicks. And so he's calling out, like, we're on the court first time. We have like an hour meeting. It's in my first training camp ever in the NBA was with Doug Moe, and like we never had a meeting. It was just like, get out there, we'll go 3 lines, and then we're going to play. But Pat Riley, we had an hour meeting, and then we get on the court, right? And he goes, okay, we're going to divide up into groups, and so we got one group with the forwards, right? So I'm figuring, all right, I'm probably in this group, and I was right. My group was Xavier McDaniel, Charles Oakley, and Anthony Mason.
Dude,
those are all bruisers.
And me.
It's over.
Hold on. Anybody understand what's wrong with this picture? I'm going, oh, how am I going to survive this?
That had to be a torture chamber. Boogey Bob, your thoughts on the great Pat Riley, man? I know we all Mavs fans here, and 2006 is a sharp cut for most of us. But give us your thought on that legacy of Pat Riley. We ain't gonna never let it go, Kiki.
We ain't gonna never let it go.
Yeah, so so Kiki, every week we do last year we did Mount Rushmore, who you would put on a Mount Rushmore for each team. Some teams there's like more than 4 players, and then there's other teams there might be 1 or 2. So this year we've been doing player legacy and coach legacy, and I usually bring the stats, but I'm gonna change it up a little bit on Pat Riley. He played on a Kentucky team that lost to UTEP. It was in the movie.
University of Texas El Paso.
And most people forgot about that. He took over for Paul Westhead. And Paul Westhead and an assistant actually invented the fast break playing style for the Lakers that got dubbed Showtime. Pat Riley inherited it, but Paul Westhead and his assistant actually had come up with that. So, yeah, Pat Riley, because of the hair, the looks, the suit, the grooming, the way he managed. I mean, that Laker team had so much talent. I had the privilege of watching them in 87 when they took the Mavericks out in the Western Conference Finals. I mean, they just were loaded. Worthy, Michael Cooper, Irvin, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and even I think Micah Thompson, Clay's father, played on that team. They were loaded, so that they were known for Showtime because Pat Riley just kind of amped it up. And for me, he's kind of an icon. But it's these last 3 things. One of them, Wild Dog touched on. He builds a culture. He's a culture builder, and a lot of coaches know how to coach, but they don't necessarily know how to build a culture. And we've seen that in Miami. As Wild Dog said, he's got multiple rings. The one thing I want to touch on, and I'd like to get Kiki's input on this, he's a great evaluator of talent, much like Jerry West was a great evaluator of talent. And props to Calvin Booth in Denver, who's done a pretty good job of evaluating talent. I'd kind of like to hear what Kiki thinks as far as Pat Riley, just as a talent evaluator.
You know, the important thing that Pat Riley does is he knows who fits. You know, whether he gets Udonis Haslem or obviously a Dwayne Wade's going to fit anywhere. But the type of players he knows what he wants, which is super important. Like, you know, Utah was very good at that in years ago. They always knew who they wanted. Danny Ainge is kind of that way. Pat Riley knows the type of player he wants, and you know, he drafts people who or trades for people that are, or signs people that are tough, hard nosed, not going to give in. They may not be. You know, he'll bypass the super talented guy for a guy who will fit into the schedule, into the culture that you mentioned. And so, you know, lots of things, you know, are important for Pat Riley. He appreciates, obviously, all the things that coaches appreciate: skills and speed, quickness, fundamentals, all that type of stuff. But I would say, if you asked him, I would venture to say that it's what's inside. It's the intangibles that he looks at. And that's where his secret is to be able to decipher, because it's hard to see. Everyone can see whether a guy could play or not, or he can run, you know, or jump, but it's hard to see what's in his heart. And, you know, is he going to give up at the last time? Is he going to do the wrong thing at the very worst time? Or is he going to come through for you and not give up? Is he going to, you know, run when it's too hard to run? And, you know, all these things that are intangible things. Pat, I think that's his secret. He's great at identifying those.
Wow. That's a great breakdown of what he does. I mean, again, he's Pat Riley, so we kind of don't like him around here, but it's just Mavs fans in me. So even though that he's been a championship coach, it's kind of hard to win an NBA championship. And I want to discuss this next. And I'm going to go to you first, Wild Dog. What are your thoughts on the ability for most teams to reach an NBA championship? And it's such a tough task to take on. What makes it so hard for people to, or teams in general, to get to a championship when it comes to the NBA?
Well, we were just all touching on it with culture. You know,
Yeah.
you have a legacy like Pat Riley's, and he came from a great culture and knew how to cultivate a great culture and maintain it. So that's number one I want to bring up is how you get to the chip. You have to have a proper culture, and everyone needs to be under one accord. If you operate under one accord, you can get anything done. Even if you don't have so-called the best player on your team, or even the best players, if you have all the great intangibles, like Kiki said, you know, and then that rolls into my second principle on how to win a chip, and that's you got to have role players. You have to have the intangibles. You have to have things, players doing things that don't show up on the stat sheet, right? And that lends to depth. You know, like, well, when we roll into the playoffs, we're only going to have a 6-7 man rotation. Yeah, but to get to your proper seeding, you have to have a bench to survive healthy. Rolling into playoffs healthy, you have to have a bench. It's a long season, right? You have to have the intangibles. You have to have the role players. You have to have a strong bench, you know. So that's key phase number 2, and Shaq Diesel backs me up on that. It's all about the role players, dog. You got to role players. I'm a star, you a star, but my team is better than your team. And that lends into what Michael Jordan says, all the stuff about the GOAT. Yeah, but who had the best team? Who had the best team ever? Then there's no conversation. That ends it right there. You can talk about the GOAT back and forth all you want. And then Jordan holds up his ring and says, who had the best team? I had the best team. You know what I'm saying? With the best coach. So, facts. And then my last thing, and this kind of really stems from all my years with the Mavericks, the Cowboys, the Rangers, and everything, being so involved in sports for so many years, is you got to have a dedicated fan base. You know? I put it down as money, right? But a dedicated fan base generates you the revenue, gets you the sponsorships, gets you the better TV deals, and so forth and so on. And going back to what Kiki has hit on a few times, and, you know, we're all about community. You got to take care of your fan base. You got to give back. You know, they give you energy, you got to give it back. You have to take care of your fans. You have to take care of your community, and they'll take care of your organization because they're the money. And those are my 3 main principles on how to win a chip, baby.
Win a chip like that? Okay, I like that. Boogey Bob, give me your thoughts on the same subject.
Well, I have five criteria to take it a different direction, but there's a quote in the movie Rocky when Apollo Creed says, "I'm a great fighter, but you fight great."
Mm-hmm.
And you can have great teams that don't play great. And so I have these in order. You got to have health. You know, to win a chip, you got to have health. You got to have team chemistry. You got to have pieces that fit together. You have to have talent. That's the obvious. And then the last, I have coaching. So you see some of these teams, they've got some great talent, but they're not healthy when the playoffs come around. And to win a championship nowadays, that's a 2-month long journey. So if you got streaky shooters, they got to be hot for 2 months. We watched the Mavericks flame out in the first round because Jason Terry would be cold when it came playoff time. And then when they won the chip in 2011, he was hot for 2 months. So but I haven't rated. You got to have health, chemistry, pieces that fit. The talent and coaching are somewhat obvious.
Makes sense. And yeah, Jason Terry, when it comes to shooting, yeah, you have to have a consistent shooter. And I think when we got Peja Stojakovic at that time, he helped them out too, because they was feeding off each other in 2011 like it was nobody's business. So I see what you're saying on that one. Kiki, your thoughts on the difficulties of winning an NBA championship? And I know you probably witnessed it first and for. So give us your thoughts on that.
You know, I think there's a couple things, and both, you know, Wild Dog, Boogey Bob, you both hit on a lot of the important things that, you know, you would say. So to me, I'll give you a different perspective on from where I sat. Now, when I headed basketball operations, the basketball operations guy was the guy who did the discipline, but he was also the complaint department. So anything went wrong with the game, from referees to, it didn't matter. You would get a phone call after the game, and it might be, you know, it could be anybody. It could be, you know, players called me at halftime many times, or they called after the game and you know, talked to me about stuff. Coaches, general managers, governors, you know, everybody called. And, you know, it was generally when things were wrong. But there were some teams that hardly called at all. Never. And, you know, I was talking with, at one time, and he probably doesn't even remember it, I was talking with Greg Popovich, obviously a great coach. Big rival of the Mavericks, clearly, no doubt about that. But you got to give him his props. He's a great coach. And,
We always give him his props here.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't call. I mean, like, and I said, Pop, you know, you guys don't call, and you know, you don't complain. I said, you know, what's up? And just to put it in perspective, I think they had won, you know, for a period with, you know, Ginobili and Duncan and Tony Parker.
Mm-hmm.
They won like 70% of their games, which is almost unheard of. I think it may be still a record in professional sports. And he said, hey, that's on us. You know, things may go wrong in the game. You got to overcome, and you got to, you know, you take responsibility for your own actions, for your team's actions, and you move on. And I didn't want to give my players any excuse, no excuse, why we didn't achieve what we wanted to achieve. So I think there is that, you know, along with kind of all the other things that were previously said, but taking responsibility and, you know, for your own actions, and then treating your you know, your teammates like family, and your coaches like, everybody's a family. And, you know, you have this family atmosphere where you all take responsibility for each other. And, you know, somebody gets beat or can't go, hey, you got next man up. You got to step up. And, you know, somebody's driving to the basket, even though it's not your man. Hey, you got responsibility to help your teammate. So that type of responsibility, sort of that, you know, combined, you know, kind of with a never quit attitude. We talked about that with Pat Riley. But that's all the great teams. You know, they have that responsibility, and they didn't all like each other. You know, from what I understand, you know, the 69 to 71 Knicks, they didn't always like each other, but they played like a team. They played like a family, and they still to this day family. So, you know, that's something that is important to all of us, is our families. And if you think about it, you treat your teammates like family, you consider them family. The love that goes beyond sort of, you know, loyalty or anything else, that makes a difference. That at the end of the day helps you overcome sort of really hard times. No, we're going to stick it out together. No, I know you're going through a hard time, but I got a fever. Michael Jordan, you know, he played with like 102 fever one time at the Knicks. No, my team needs me. I'm going to be out there somehow, some way. And, you know, it's kind of, you know, you put the team sort of first in your thought process. And I gotta be there for the team. Yeah, I want to accomplish my personal goals, of course. And, you know, within a team structure, you allow for personal goals. And that's
Sure.
in a team structure, that's in a family. Everybody wants somebody to succeed, and they don't care who does it. And I think that's the secret if you're a great coach, from, you know, John Wooden to Coach K to Dean Smith to some of the great coaches, Pat Riley, you know, Popovich, you know, there's, you know, Fitch. There's just so many coaches that are tremendous. They create that atmosphere. Wild Dog hit on culture. It's like, you know, hit on the, when we talked about it, you know, they had this family culture where you feel like you're part of something. You're part of something special, you know, and I've had that a number of times at teams, but, you know, not every place do you have that enthusiasm. You don't feel that, like, wow, I got to pull my weight, otherwise we're not going to win. And what I do is, it's important.
Yes.
You know, you believe in something, and, you know, that leads to loyalty, and, you know, the sense of camaraderie. We're together, and that's a form of friendship. And, you know, if you're part of the process and you're listened to, you know, that could be cooperation, you know, so you feel like anything's possible in that type of environment. So they create, I think the great coaches, the great general managers create this atmosphere where anything's possible if we're together, and we'll come out of it some way. So I don't know. I think you all mentioned all the great things, but I just always noticed the teams that won the most complained the least.
All right.
Makes sense. And I want to add something to that. Well, get your opinion. And since the Mavs made it to the championship last year, 2024, what would it be in their way for this year for them to make it back there to the finals and probably win it? What do you think they could correct or get better with? What do you see as if you looking at it through the lens of a general manager?
You know, I think they have a lot of the pieces. There's no question about it. I think Jason Kidd is a great coach. I really do. I love him as a coach. Loved him as he's a great competitor as a player. People don't understand that. You know, every time they had all types of great defenders on those Nets teams, but he took the toughest player at the end. Here, Kenyon Martin. Kenyon Martin was, now that was a tough guy, right there.
Mm-hmm.
But
Local kid.
you know, yeah, I mean, Kidd was a competitor, and he'd find a way. So I think he's done a great job. I think he's somebody that Luka, who's a, you know, generational star, can respect. And, you know, they've got a lot of talent on the team. And I think that, you know, once the defensive side kicks in for them, and I think they'll get there because I think Kidd will demand it, that they're going to be just fine. And whether they make it back to the championship games or even the, you know, the conference final, that in my opinion is going to be health. You know, can they stay healthy? And if they can stay healthy, Irving and, you know, Doncic and all these guys can all stay healthy, and the young players, the role players contribute a little bit more than you might expect, they're going to be tough. No question.
I appreciate that answer. So we're going on our last topic of the night, and this is it's a good topic. I've always wanted to talk to some players about it, but I haven't had a chance to. So there's been some studies out, as Sports Illustrated put something out some years ago about players losing money after they retire from basketball within 3 years. And that's been kind of a sore thumb for a lot of people to talk about, because it's kind of hard for people to really understand finances when you're given that kind of money at a very young age, and probably your family didn't grow up that kind of money. You know what I mean? So it's kind of hard for them to determine how and what to do with it. Some players get through it. And we're going to talk about, you know, players, what happens for those players who become broke after 3 years after retiring basketball. And I want to start with you, Boogey Bob. And I'm pretty sure you got some interesting information that we can give the audience. What are your thoughts on that subject?
Thank you, Mike. And you touched on one of them, and ESPN 30 for 30. One of the first ones they did was broke. Allen Iverson made like upwards of $200 million and was broke. But the two biggest things that and the NBA is trying to address it, but lack of financial education. Uh, Even if you don't grow up with it or don't have parents with it or you didn't study it in college or you played 1 year, they hire these people that are experts, and a lot of them are just scam artists, agents trying to take money out of the pocket. But the some of that responsibility should fall on the player to at least become financially uh, literate, so that they know when they've got a good agent or when they've got a good money manager. And you touched on the second. When you give teenagers millions of dollars without life experience, unless their parents taught them how to manage money when they were younger, you're giving them millions of dollars as a teenager. Like, I consider myself a good money manager, but I don't know how to manage, would have managed $1 million. It's like people that win the lotto after they take the yearly payment. A lot of them wind up becoming broke because their expenditures keep going up, but the money eventually doesn't come in. Uh, and the one thing they addressed in that when they were talking about Allen Iverson was, he had a posse everywhere he went. You know, the Allen Iverson story that gets picked on because he was in jail and bad neighborhood, grow up, number one pick, takes the Sixers to the finals. But his posse, they're like, gimme, 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 hand me out
Yeah.
money. Like, and he's just like, I got it. Uh, so they spend on elaborate things. Uh, Bless his heart, Luka's going to make enough. It won't dent, but they go out and buy a Lamborghini when probably just a normal car would be fine, but you got to pay the insurance on the Lamborghini. And the average NBA career is like 4 or 5 years. What are you going to do after that 5 years when you spent 25% of your earnings on a Lamborghini? Or are you
Yeah.
buying everybody in your family a house? So spending habits and lack of education, I think, would be my number one and two.
Yeah, that's crazy, though. I mean, like, I get it, man. They want to show off certain things and be in the in crowd. Like, in high school, you always wanted to kind of dress nice and smell nice so that you can attract the girls. So being a teenager in the NBA, you got money to do that. So I get it. Kiki, that same question addressed to you, man. I know you've seen this probably firsthand. Give us your thoughts on that, and what can people improve on? I know the NBA has things in place, as Boogey Bob stated, but kind of give your thoughts on this.
Well, yes, the NBA does have a lot of things in place, but I talked to a number of successful people, who are money managers or bankers, and I think Boogey Bob said it pretty well. You know, Anybody, and I ask them all the same question: if at 20 years old, somebody gave you millions and millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, would you make a few mistakes? Would you do a few bad things that you regretted? Would you go, do some dumb stuff? And every single one said, of course, of course. And they had some of them, the best educations the world could provide. And they still made terrible mistakes. And, if given that money at that time. And so, that's the first thing. You got to understand that as you have trained and are an athlete, and I say this to athletes, think about this scenario. So you're a professional athlete, professional basketball player, and you got this money managers who's been at this for years and really good at his job. I mean, really good. And he came in and said, you know what? I'm going to play you one-on-one for $1 million. How many times would he beat you? Any idea? Would he have any chance of beating you for $1 million? He put some serious money on the table. No chance. Never. He's infinity and zero. Like zero for infinity. He never beat you. As a matter of fact, you and all your buddies are going to be laughing at him. It's like, what? You're coming into my house where I know what I'm doing and I'm a pro. That's one of the first rules you learn as a pro. Don't play a pro in his own game. Come on, pro golfer, pro football player, it doesn't matter. Don't think that's a different level. So they're professionals with money.
Yes.
And so it's the same thing. Turn it right around. You're going into his house where he's dealt with money for years and is a professional at that. Just like you're a professional in basketball, doesn't mean you know anything about money.
Yes.
Now he does. So he's looking at you as a professional athlete. Okay, how many times are you going to win in this game? It's a problem from the start. But the answer, of course, is learn, study, and it starts with at times teachers and parents, and you got to teach your kids. You got to teach your kids you're responsible, and we talked about giving back. That's why it's so valuable to have athletes tell their story. Tell them about the mistakes they made, and okay, learn this and watch out for this, and you're right. It all adds up, because somehow you've got whether it's your family or your friends from school, there's a "we've made it" mentality instead of "you made it." No, we've all made it. I said, no, wait a minute, hold up. When I was out there, in a gym, you were out doing whatever you were doing. Yes, it's okay. I made it. Yes. Okay. Now my first responsibility is, and you can find it in the oldest texts in the world, take care of yourself first, and then you can take care of everybody else.
Yes.
Make sure you're okay first. And it's just like, in the airplane, when they say when that something happens and that bag drops down, put on your mask first, because if you don't put on your mask first, you're not going to get your baby's mask on.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things you got to be constantly learning, and athletes need to take responsibility for that themselves, of course, but they also need people to help them along the way. The NBA, the NFL, MLB, all of them have good programs to help. So there's a lot of factors that are there that people are always hanging around athletes, and especially today, professional athletes make so much money and are so successful. But as you pointed out, time is short as a professional athlete. 3-4 years average time that people play, and a lot more people play 1 year than they do 10. So that's the average doesn't always tell the story. So when you get a chance to get in there, I always tell athletes, make sure you're learning, make sure you're watching, make sure you're careful. And you don't need to spend it all at once. You want to get your parents something, your mom, a nice house or whatever it might be. Okay, that it is admirable, and there's no question about it. And I'm happy for the guys making a lot of money and the women making a lot of money, but make sure you take care of that money. So you're going to have some money. Life's a long time after playing sports, and be a good example. You can do a lot more good if you'll save your money, be responsible, and then give back later. And so that's what I would say. It's something that I started a business when I was when I came out of college, when I finished playing basketball out of college. When I finished playing basketball, I started a business of managing money for athletes, and all we did was sort of a family office where we just pointed them to good managers and good accountants and good lawyers that have a good reputation and will take care of their money, and maybe not make them another bazillion dollars, because athletes, every single one of them, they already hit the lottery. You don't need to try to hit it twice. It was 1,000,000 to 1 shot to hit the first time. You're not going to hit it again. So just be careful with what you got. Keep learning though. that's the secret to me, almost anything. And that's, you look at sort of the common traits of the world's most successful people, if you want to measure it in money, the billionaires in the world. Well, they have this, relentless work ethic, and they just kind of never give up. Some are smart, some are not as smart, some are well educated, some are not well educated, but they don't give up. They keep going. That's the first thing. The second thing is they're life learners. They keep learning throughout their life. They read a lot, they ask questions, they're curious. And so I would say, if they can, the solution is keep learning, keep being a life learner, and, take care of yourself. Don't apologize ever for taking care of yourself, saving your money, making sure that you don't have to buy everybody everything just because you may have a car now and you never had one before, but you got one now. And it doesn't mean you need to buy 10.
Not fact. And so when you first got your first NBA check, who helped you manage it? Was it your father, or did he suggest somebody for you?
My father helped me, and but it's always tough. We all have stories. I mean, I'm not going to say that I'm different than any other athlete, and we have stories where we did dumb things, and bought dumb things, or I tried to went in dumb investments. I didn't buy too many things, so I wasn't really very materialistic. I'm not necessarily that way, but invested in like, oh boy, this is going to be easy, and making money is not easy. Sorry. Think how hard you had to work as an athlete to make $1. It was like, to make any money at sports, you got to be years of dedication and years of hard work. And then most don't make it. So it's the same way in any business, any field. And so making money, this get rich quick scheme that a friend of a friend may have, you're investing in his dream, not yours. So be very careful with that one.
Yeah.
Man, that's good information. Well, Dogg, man, we're gonna let you close it out with that same question, man, as far as what athletes need to do better and why do they become broke after 3 years of retirement? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, there's no meat left on the bone, so I'm just gonna go straight to the marrow, because I mean, educating themselves on personal finance and always be learning, period. Always be educating yourself or gleaning from people. If you're not a reader, there's videos. If you can't watch the videos, then put on the audio books. I mean, there's no, it's 2024. There's no excuses, right? On all the information and knowledge is right at your fingertips, right? So you got to educate yourself. You don't have to be an expert, but you have to educate yourself enough so you can have discernment about the team you hire, your CPA, your attorney, and your tax preparer when it comes to your personal finances. You know what I'm saying? So, and then of course the culture. Don't get caught up in the culture, right? Okay, my chain is gold, and because I am who I am, you think these diamonds are real, but I'm not falling for that diamond hustle. That's an artificial market. Buy moissanite. You know what I'm saying? So you can, there's ways of you having to comply with the expectations of yourself, right? If you have a Lamborghini, okay, treat yourself, have a Lamborghini and flex like that, because that's what people expect from you, and it makes you comfortable. But like Kiki said, you don't need 10, dog. You know what I'm saying? There's only one driver's seat. You only have one butt. You know what I'm saying? You don't need 5 mansions, 5,000 plus square feet. It's just one of you, man. You know what I'm saying? You need one bed, one restroom. You know what I'm saying? It'd be exceedingly. So you have to have some discipline, some control, and yeah, you have to give into the culture a bit, but you don't have to, execute it in a unintelligent way. Be frugal, intelligent about how you, represent the culture and don't fall into these traps, And then everybody's talking about, how the entourage is, and now we got money, you, your friend, your family, your childhood friends you grew up. You have to learn to say no. Do not allow your friends and your family to become parasites. You just got to say no. And when it's all said and done, I'm going to take it another route, is that you got to sit down and talk to somebody, right? Because even your own mama, you start telling your own mama no and having to, keep discipline with things, you have to sit down and talk with someone, right? You got to have a coach, someone you can turn to who's a professional to help you deal with all this nonsense, with all
That's
the
tough.
people reaching in your, you need some help. You need some support here. And then with all the dealing with the pressures of the culture, right? You need a coach, counselor to help you deal with that. And then with someone to help lead your team and having discernment over who, your lawyers, your accountants, and your tax preparers. You have to have an auditor for your team, So you have to have a team captain, and there needs to be like a life coach / counselor, someone to help you deal with all this phases of nonsense that are coming at you, okay? And then I want to end, Big Mike, with, like I was saying, all these things are accessible to you, right? Like I started reading, especially in high school, magazines, books, educating myself, right? And what it boils down to, I want to leave the audience with two schools of thought. There's the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers. Technically, actually, the Vanderbilts had more money than the Rockefellers. But the Vanderbilt's heir recently got, $1.5 million. And all those billions of dollars worth, right? The last inheritor, who's a personality, media personality, he got 1.5 million. That ain't right. Some ain't right, right? But the Rockefellers, if you look at all of their descendants, even though many of them had to work a day in their lives, right? They're still worth billions of dollars, right? But it's a simple method. It's a method to it. So with the Rockefellers, what they first did was, how do I protect what I worked for all these years, right? Like Kiki said, you had to spend all this time practicing all these things you had to do where you weren't getting paid just to have a 1% to 2% chance of even making it to the pros. And now you got your money. How do you protect yourself? How do you protect it, right? And there's ways of creating dynasty trust. And then you don't create trust fund babies and spoil your children, your grandchildren. You mandate that they do the right thing too. That in order to get any money from the dynasty trust, you mandate that they also create a dynasty trust for themselves, their spouses, and all their children. So this creates, you take distributions from the funds, but during your life and upon your death, you're then replenishing the family trust. So I would encourage everyone, including players, to look up the Rockefeller method and apply this to your life. So even if you or somebody down the line really screws up and messes up everything, it doesn't mess up everything for everybody. It's built-in protection.
Well, I personally love that. It's a great message, and kind of from my perspective on this, those that don't know history are doomed to repeat it, and
Yes,
so
sir.
learn, and make it just like basketball is your passion. You got sports or football, whatever, it doesn't matter. Make that a interest and a passion too. Learn about money, and it's not difficult, but you got to spend time doing it, and you got to spend time watching. I thought that was a really good point about having auditors come in and watch over the people. You have somebody in your corner always. You need mentors. You need outside people, third parties to come say, hey, listen, is this working the way it's supposed to be working? Is my lawyer doing what he's supposed to do? Is my money manager doing what he's supposed to do? And have they call them forensic accountants. Have a forensic accountant come in and kind of just take a look. Yeah, so nobody can take advantage of you, and nobody will. And in that regard, but we've all, as athletes, we all have been taken advantage of in that regard. But at the end of the day, who are you going to blame? You're going to blame those people? No. It's like the scorpion and the frog, you all heard that story, and the scorpion does what the scorpion does.
Yes, sir.
And so you got to take care of yourself. Take responsibility for your actions. Don't sit there and whine about it, blame other people, and you're not a victim. Take responsibility yourself. That's what the successful people do.
Yes, sir.
Well put. Well put. Kiki, man, thank you so much for jumping on with us this evening. It's been a great show. I just want to thank you again, man. We had a great time talking. I hope you had a good time talking with us, meeting Wild Dog, meeting Boogey Bob, meeting myself. And we'd hope to get to some other time in the future if it's ever possible. So we can probably work out some times. Typically, we do it on a Friday. So we made the exception because we wanted you to get on so fast. So we appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you. Very, very grateful for the conversation. I enjoyed it a lot, learned a lot. Listen, lots of things I don't know still. So I'm still trying to catch up with everybody. So I appreciate you, every single one of you. Thank you very much.
No worries. All right, Wild Dog, close out for us, man. Tell the people where they can find you at on the social media, man, and give them your handles.
Hey, I don't be doing too much. I'm a good dog, but you can find me on YouTube at Wild Dog 357. That's Wild DOGG 357, baby. And Swish, 1, 2, 3, 4, for real.
Boogey Bob, tell the people where they can find you at on the internet, man, so they can catch up with you social media wise.
Right up there in that corner right above Kiki. Swish for real. Subscribe. What a pleasure to have you on tonight, Kiki.
Like and subscribe.
What a tremendous honor. And to be able to go back and revisionist history and talk with some of that with you and get your perspective, that's I'll value this podcast for quite a while. And so thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it, Bob. It's a great broadcast. I said I would definitely come back. You guys want me to come back, then we'll discuss whatever you want to talk about. I love it. You gotta get. Absolutely. I like it when I get the tough questions.
All right, Kiki, where can the people find you at social media wise? Because I think I'll just subscribe to you on X, but is there any other social media handles you would like the people to know if they just want to kind of give you your props?
You know what? I appreciate that. I'm pretty bad on social media. I don't do too much. I'm on LinkedIn. If you want to find me there, I do post some articles as I told you, and if you want to find me, that's probably the best place right now.
Right.
LinkedIn. Guys, you can check him out on LinkedIn. It's been an amazing show. I'm going to give you guys back your evening. Kiki, thanks again for joining us. Boogey Bob, Wild Dog, sign out. Swish for real, guys. You have a great evening.
That's it, Pray.